Listen.
News and views which differ from the mainstream news. I'm OBG.
1, 2.
OBG.
4. Listen. 1, 2. 3. 4.
I'm OBG.
Listen.
Hi, I'm the OBG and welcome to show 004. And once again, little preamble. This is a show about the people, by the people, for the people. And it can work if you contribute. So please send your stories, things you want me to cover, images, videos, or your music even, to obgchat@gmail.com. And together we can do this. And the aim is to create a show that grows until we have regular viewers that we can pull away from the mainstream for 10 minutes every day. And that would be a measure of our success.
A show about the people, by the people, for the people.
You're the producers of the show. I just wanna let you know.
So, you are the producers of the show, and everything that you contribute means that you're producing with me, and I'll put your names up in the titles, which is a place where everyone wants to be. That's the purpose of our existence. This is why we're here. It's to get our name up in titles. You know what it's like when you're on telly. Oh, did you see so-and-so? Joe was on telly last night. Sarah was on telly, and we go kind of mental. And it's almost as if that's our aim, that's our goal. And that's because we've been brainwashed with telly so much. We enjoy telly, I must admit. It's an escape. It's replaced the theatre and so on. But we've handed ourselves over to it. And this is where a lot of the manipulation is done. The greater majority of the manipulation through adverts, through the movies themselves, through television series. And so it's the same old story always. Anyway, moving on. I was told that I was sensitive by somebody that made a quip about me being old. And although I wasn't too bothered, I'm not too bothered normally. I was bothered on this occasion, obviously, which is why I responded. I don't know which level it bothered me to, truly. But I always find it strange that people find it easy to put forward their negative and often unfunny opinion on a subject, which they call a joke, and then they sulk and become defensive. When you point out how you felt by describing your condition or, how you felt at the time, and then they struggle to accept the reality of the exchange. And, almost all comedy is based on a serious subtext. It's about real life. And even if it's not, there's a subtext there. And obvious observational comedy is an art form. You have to be good at that. For instance, when I say, like I could do with a chair, and then somebody guffaws and, adds, oh yeah, you are old, or, oh yeah, you are getting on though. And it makes me wonder why. Like in many other cultures, they don't just offer you a bloody chair and ask if you're okay. And anyway, I think it's a very English thing. And that reminds me also of another thing. This has happened to me about 3 times so far, and I've seen it. I'm guilty of it too. I'm English, by paper anyway. So I'm walking down the road with my friend. He's young. We have a laugh with each other and that. And I trip and almost fall. And his first reaction is, oh, you okay? If that was in England, people are like, and we laugh at the fact that someone nearly tripped over. And we've got a very defeatist, let's put ourselves upon other people attitude in the UK. And it's almost as if the person is simply pointing out that they've got one up on you. And, like it's a game that they have to win. So be nice. Save the funny for me.
You not heard of the OBG? Big people talk, man. You need to get involved. You might even catch a blessing.
So, I've got a couple of subjects tonight that I want to talk about, and I'll be ending on the Greta Thunberg expose, which I'm going to do as a 2-part. I'll do part 1 tonight, and then I'll present part 2 on Sunday. Just bear with me a sec. Okay, so yeah, I lose my glasses, by the way, more or less every day. And the beauty of losing my glasses almost every day is finding them again. It's like almost like I've won something. And of course, there is a heartache, a deep suffering of losing them every time I lose them. But I do found them, and I've spent countless hours crying and beating myself up for not remembering where I vowed to remember I'd put them. But I always find them. They're in the house after all. And when I do locate them, I'm left with the deepest feeling of elation. So, and did I call that a first world problem? I have to see that on the rewind. But talking about first world problems, stop it. First worlders use the term so that they can excuse their bad behaviour, and it's as if it gives them licence to actually moan about something trivial whilst excusing it under the guise of a joke. And, there is just one world, and there can be only one. So, let's talk about it. Right, so, topic number one. The middle-class boys I know are a right funny bunch. Now, I can only talk about my experience, and do note the disclaimer before going through the trouble of telling me that my experience and perception of my reality is wrong. I see working-class people struggling to form their identity while they fight for basic survival, whilst the middle class just buy into whatever identity they think fits them. Yeah, you Mr. Bad Boy Junglist, Philip Rees Melthorpe, good luck with your adolescent solipsism. And your nice backwards cap and Jamaican patois that you got from, the people that you really don't hang around with or have no connection with. And, you spent £5,000 on a music production studio just to produce watered down drum and bass jungle because you ain't really truly feeling it. And I get it. Your bland, non-confrontational, institutionalised life up until now has kept you shielded from real danger. And there's no edge behind you or no edge in the scene that you ascribe to. And listen to 9 Inch Nails and death metal for the first 17 years of your life, and then in secret also, when in the forefront you present yourself as a junglist. I think my phone's ringing. Live, has a causal effect, and you can see that in the weak bass lines that presented in this middle class drum and bass music. So you should count your blessings. You have a decent job, wealthy parents, and destiny smiles on you. So let that stuff go and be yourself. So I just wanted to just let off a little hate there, and I think we should all do on occasion, because I believe all of these emotions are within us, all of them, yet we refuse to accept them. For instance, we say that people harbour hate or hold on to grudges or negativity, when in fact, that's nothing to write home about. If I told you that you were also harbouring love or happiness or laughter, then most people would actually find that a strange concept. Yet to me it seems obvious. It's simply a case of releasing it when an occasion arises that requires it. And if you see something funny, laughter doesn't come to you, you already possess it and you let it out. If you see something you don't like, it doesn't come to you neither. You already possess it and you let it out. And as you know, if you're not in the mood or you're not switched on to something being either hateful or funny, then you simply don't laugh or you don't react. And that proves that you're the one in control. And if you put yourself into that mode more often, then you'll be able to resolve those issues. And if you hold on to these ideas, then you'll also understand that it is you who ultimately has control over your actions. And you will stop passing blame onto others for making you angry or for making you sad or for causing the negativity within you from surfacing. And we don't always have to hide those emotions, but get a grip on them. And when we do get a grip on them, that leads to a more fulfilled existence. Of course, it requires a strong will, and that can be achieved through practice and, as some say, through meditation. And meditation doesn't have to cost you £25 a session with Shakti, originally called Helen, that set up a practice at home or down at a holistic centre. If you can learn to meditate as as you're working, as you're riding your bike, reading a book, or going about your daily pursuit, and you can tune into your inner self from wherever you sit, wherever you lay, or wherever you stand. The trick is just to try it. Go on. Right. I was speaking to a friend the other day. If you're watching this, and I know you are, this isn't about you, by the way. This is what triggered it. And it was about the pronunciation of names. And the names of famous people. The accent, the tone, and the inflection of their country of origin. And if we do that, where do we start and where do we stop? And does a person deserve proper pronunciation if they're more well known or because of their particular vocation? And as an example, I said the other day Albert Camus the other day, and my friend reminded me, he wasn't being funny. He's a guy I got a lot of respect for, Kevin. And he said, by the way, it's Albert Camus, And for those of you who choked in your cow smoothie when I murdered the name and you thought to yourself, oh my God, did you just say Albert Camus? It's actually Albert Camus. I know, and I knew that. But we don't expect French people to say Shakespeare instead of Shakespeare every time. It's a difficult thing. It's very difficult. Yes, I say Descartes instead of Descartes. And, what are the rules? What are the rules? It's a tough one. So if you can educate me and others on this, either phone in fact, you can phone in right now on 0756 450 6440, because I want to test this phone link. Or you can leave a message in the comments on YouTube or even on Facebook. But please, I'm slowly moving away from Facebook. Facebook's, they're moving their model. They've got us all in there and they're trying to sell us stuff, trying to get us to create pages, trying to get us to pay and so on. And if you like these videos on Facebook alone, then it gives Facebook the attention alone. And the videos get no attention on YouTube, where they actually take the brunt of the hosting. And also, it popularizes the show. So if you like these videos, please go to YouTube and give them a thumbs up there. And also, if anyone does want to call in, I was going to have a section, but you can do it any time. Call in, interrupt, and maybe look for a good spot where you think, okay, he's not like on fire here, and I will answer the phone and you'll be live on the OBG show. So, something that occurred to me this week, which I'll get straight to after the break. That wasn't meant to happen.
Listen.
News and views which differ from the mainstream news. I'm OBG.
One.
Big people talk, man. You need to get involved. You might even catch a blessing.
Okay, so the question on everyone's lips: where is Greta Thunberg? Right now, I'm looking a little bit smug because we told you that this was going to happen. I was one of the early people who got on. I'm not showing about the fact I was early, but I think when you've got your eyes on the ball and you're always looking out for these things, and I don't mean that you're tense and you're living this life, tinfoil hat, and you're wondering what's going on in the world. It becomes who you are. It's just like what people call intuition, sixth sense, whatever name you give to it. You become good at it. And as soon as the Greta Thunberg expose, she was exposed to the world, I was like that. I smell a rat. And then I started looking at the key players and I thought, no. This is too good to be true. There's been young women all over the world of all ages fighting for rights, fighting for freedom, fighting for justice. And, you never hear their voice. If you do suddenly hear their voice, it's often because they're stood beside a politician or, the mayor or someone who's just trying to gain some publicity. But I'm going to do a two-part expose on this starting today. So if you're active on social media, you have the habit of searching and scrolling through Google, I wouldn't recommend, to see what's trending in the world, then it's close to impossible that you aren't familiar with Greta Thunberg. She's a 16-year-old Swedish girl with Asperger's who made her life's purpose to urge governments and large corporations to join her efforts and respond to the climate crisis that she believes Earth and humanity face in the immediate future. In the last year, Greta managed to secure a place on the global stage, making the world hear her as she pointed everyone's attention to what she thinks is perhaps a last call for us to act on the climate emergency that might actually be upon us. And she doesn't want you to be hopeful. She wants you to panic, as according to the science she believes in, we're facing a mass extinction due to close to irreversible climate change triggered by humans and post-industrial revolution living. Greta's age, her boldness, dedication and mental condition certainly inspired many not to only listen to what she says in her speeches and interviews, but to actually act on the supposed challenge in front of us. However, it simultaneously infuriated just as many people, the vast majority of who condemned her activism as scaremongering, and those around her, including her parents, as child abusers and manipulators who exploit a teenager with autism. And when one reads into the story, from how her obsession with climate change started to how she rose to stardom, with all the peculiar circumstances that surround her, you can easily understand why people were enraged. This was soon followed by groups of people that began calling other people bullies, old white misogynists and climate change deniers for attacking a teenage girl with autism and Asperger's disease. Boo-hoo. As an aside, once again, we see divide. So I'm not saying divide is necessarily not going to happen, but I'm always left wondering why people don't look for commonalities than simply join forces. And I truly think people want to be angry separatists, as it gives them an identity that differs from the mainstream and gives them license to their anger. And in some of her interviews, Greta states that she remembered how when she was 8, her and her classmates watched a documentary about climate change at school. And while the films caused fear in the classroom or during the session, once the class was over, all the kids seemed to have forgotten about it, except for her special condition. Greta simply couldn't let it go. She was terrified that the world would come to an end, and she couldn't quite comprehend why we did so little to prevent it from happening. And as you can see there, it's something that she's hooked on from very early in life. And the way reality that was presented scared her so much that when she was 11, Greta suffered a serious depression and refrained from eating, lost around 22 pounds in weight, and she even stopped talking. And she was later diagnosed with Asperger's, autism, selective mutism and OCD, which has made the critics believe and blame the climate change activists and those who guide her of using her mental condition and for her, for their own interests. And she soon dedicated herself to climate change activism, and in an attempt to reduce her carbon footprint to the lowest level possible, she became a vegan. And I'll be doing a show on that soon. She stopped using air transport, and she forced their parents to do the same. So the story of Greta's journey, or at least the mainstream, one that her supporters push in the media, started humbly. In August 2018, a 15-year-old girl afraid of a mass extinction due to almost irreversible climate change went on a one-student school strike in front of the Swedish parliament. Her handwritten sign, which read "Skolstrejk for klimatet," and her message were clear. Greta also vowed to skip school until the adults in charge realised that they needed to act on the environmental crisis in front of them. On her first protest day, Greta Thunberg was suddenly discovered by no other than an entrepreneur and environmentalist named Ingmar Rentzhog, and he was just as devoted to the cause as she was. And Rentzhog had recently started a social platform named We Don't Have Time, and this is a social media platform, but it's focused on people who want to address the immediate climate crisis, and was, as many believe, in need of an attention-grabbing hook to promote and grow his business. So astounded by her willingness to act, in his words, alone against the entire world at the age of 15 and do something about the ecological crisis, Ingmar, who was at that time on his way to work, photographed Greta and shared what has become one of the most iconic pictures of the year, if you only count popular media. And as luck would have it, the photograph gained popularity and went viral almost instantly. And within the first week, Rentzhog's accidental social media move secured Greta at least 6 interviews with large newspapers in Sweden and in Denmark. And then from there on, her rise to fame started, and in September 2019, Greta influenced a week-long climate strike known as Global Week for Future, and it is considered the largest protest in human history, with more than 4 million protesters in more than 160 countries. Now, I know many of you XR folk and pro-Greta people have been pushing the numbers regarding the turnout. However, I would like to see the results of this at some point. If you have anything you want to share, please send it to obgchat@gmail.com. Oh, wait. And I want to make it clear that I understand that I think there might probably likely be a problem, but I'm listening to experts on both sides, and the jury is out. On the 23rd of September, Greta accused the world leaders at the UN summit in her very famous "How dare you" speech, they have stolen her childhood and dreams, which is rich from a girl who's had a fantastic upbringing and, very wealthy parents living in a wealthy part of town, with their false promises, and pressured them to react promptly, or the consequences will be devastating for humanity, and that they will not be forgiven, and that the world at that point came to know of Greta. So incidentally, there have been children all over the developing world, some younger than Greta, that have been campaigning for change for the longest time. And why don't we hear their voices? We dump our waste in their countries, we construct factories that spew poisons into their air, and of course they have droughts, floods, hurricanes and earthquakes, and have been of nobody's concern for the longest time. And nobody's ever mentioned it's anything to do with climate. They're just natural disasters. And imagine somewhere right now there's a wealthy, narcissistic new ager claiming that these people must have done something wrong in a previous life and that it's only karma. Twunts. So climate change hysteria and the green capitalism, the puppeteers, a teenager and a girl on the autistic spectrum is the headline. The critics of Greta's activism and the climate change deniers, as some media outlets call them, unintentionally joined efforts to prove that the image of Greta as a teenage climate change warrior, and she was being portrayed in many media outlets as she was being portrayed, wasn't created by accident or organically at all. On the contrary, they believe that her road to one of the most influential figures in modern popular age was strategically engineered by lobbyists and green capitalists who, despite their ecological consciousness, are still very much like the people she excoriates in her speeches, elitists who at the end of the day care only about money and power. So with the help of investigative journalists, the critics dug for evidence regarding the beginning of Greta's rise to fame, and in doing so, they managed to uncover the connection between Ingmar Rentzhog and Greta's mother, the Swedish opera singer Malena Ernman. And according to their research, Ingmar and Malena, as well as Greta's father, Svante Thunberg, attended the same climate change conference known in the Climate Parliament just a few months before Ingmar had discovered Greta. So now, when you listen to Rentzhog's, the guy who discovered his initial story, he suggested that he'd never met Greta nor her parents before, and that his passing in front of the Swedish Parliament was purely by chance. However, when confronted by the media, Ingmar admitted not only did he meet Malena, but he was actually tipped about Greta's one student protest in an email by Bo Theron, a fellow climate change activist, and according to some media outlets, a leader of the fossil-free Dasland Association. So we can see that these people were connected, and it isn't too hard to draw a conclusion as to their roles in this massive fabrication. I'll be covering part 2 of this little expose on Sunday's show. Do tune in. And on that one, love. I'm the OBG.
4. Listen.
News and views which differ from the mainstream news. I'm the OBG.
1, 2.
OBG.
4. Listen. 1, 2, 3.